All right, our task is to find GDP per capita for different countries, and then from that use it to understand a little bit about the economic history, maybe what's going on in our particular country, and then compare and contrast. To do that, we're going to go over to the left-hand side, Economic and Policy and Debt. Click on that. It should have a whole bunch of different data variables. Go down to GDP per capita, current U.S. dollar, because this is the United States. Unclick world. I mean, you can click it if you want. It's a good way to compare it against world averages, just to kind of compare your countries to the world average. But for the purposes of my demonstration, I'm not going to do it. But feel free to do it on yours. My countries are all in East Asia, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to click on the triangle, and I got to click on each of my countries: China, Japan, and Korea. And that would be South Korea. You can see People's Republic of Korea, that's North Korea. The data is not available for them. So if that happens to you, then find a country that's close to it geographically to yours. And so, if I wanted to, then I'd be, Democratic Republic of Korea, it's not on there. Find a country very close to it, but I'm going to maybe find Taiwan or another Asian country. All right, so now let's try to interpret the data. So what we have is we have GDP per capita, current U.S., and we've got from 1960 all the way till current, going from left to right. And so we can compare Japan, Korea, and China. So just quickly, we can say Japan has a higher GDP per capita, so thus is a higher income country historically and still to this day compared to South Korea, but also China. Very clearly we can see that. It's essentially the line is higher. Also, as you follow along the line, as you hover over it, it actually gives you a number. And so feel free, in fact, I highly encourage you to incorporate these numbers in your responses. So we can see right now, 2015, most current data, $32,000 is the GDP per capita for the country of Japan, Korea, $27,000, China, $7,000 or almost $8,000. And so that's how to interpret these suckers. Further, what we have to do is we have to, find out, okay, let's do a little bit more. What's going on? Let's explain why certain countries might have higher GDP per capita than other countries. And to do that, we got to look at some historical patterns. We can see Japan. We're kind of humming along here. We're doing something. So maybe talk about, what was it that after the 1960s and 70s caused the Japanese economy to kind of kickstart. But really, what happened in the 80s to really cause this boom in the Japanese economy. Hint, the automobiles. So the outcompeting the United States in automobiles. While the United States is cranking out Firebirds and Camaros, they're cranking out cars that people actually want in large numbers. But we see both Japan and South Korea have kind of had this similar rise, but in 1998, so in the late 1990s, both of them, a decline. So what happened there? Just knowing what I know about the history of Asia, that's the economic recession of the late 90s that devastated much of Asia. And so then you can see Japan really hasn't fully recovered. It's kind of had ups and downs. But what happened here in Japan with this decline since 2012? And what's going on there is actually a natural disaster, the role of a tsunami. Other things, what's causing the continued growth in the Korean economy, what's causing the growth in the Chinese economy. All of these things are, what I would want you to explain in your analysis. Further, some things to mention, if this is for a later question, what other things to mention? Mention maybe deindustrialization, maybe mentioned outsourcing. Especially in the case of China, the spatial division of labor, high-income countries, we typically see them as far as they're producing and manufacturing high-income type of stuff. They're not cranking out bananas. They're not cranking out sex toys. Instead, they're cranking out automobiles. They're cranking out CAT scan machines. They're cranking out medical devices. And so this is what I'm leading to is the second part of this question, and that's where you try to find, okay, what do they export? And so China, machinery, electronic equipment; Korea, semiconductors; Japan, motor vehicles. So we're talking, high-end stuff. We're not talking about manufacturing like we see, wood products, clothing, shoes. We're talking sophisticated electronics. And so that also is a symbol of, here we have high-income countries. Now, in my case, for my three countries, they're all relatively wealthy. Maybe China, we could say, is middle income based on its GDP per capita, and that table it's included in this particular question. But this is just, kind of how to go through this particular question, kind of some of the things to think about.